Hi everyone, I'm Tim Rickman, and right now I'm going to show you how to make some of this two-colored tissue paper that I've been using to make some of the box pleated projects that I've been designing lately. Alright, let me show you what materials you're going to need. Okay, so you're going to need a large flat surface. I like to use this mirror, but those are kind of expensive, so just use whatever works. But make sure to get permission from your parents or your wife. You're also going to need this. It's wallpaper paste. I got this at the hardware store. You don't want to use a glue because that's going to harden the paper. This is more like just a paste to stick the pages together. You're going to need paper towels, a bowl that you can mix up the paste in because we're going to thin that down, and maybe a large paintbrush, and also a fork to mix it with, and a spoon. And we'll also need some paper. Now, it's an important thing to know about the paper. You want to pick a kind of paper that's sort of metallic-y, almost looks like it has a little bit of plastic in it. Otherwise, it's going to tear really easily when you get the water on the paper. This is an example of some tissue paper that's going to tear when it gets wet. And also, you want to avoid any kind of paper that the color will run when it gets wet. It doesn't really matter too much if the color runs. We can work with that, but it'll be a little bit messier. But if you take a little small piece of your tissue paper and put some water on it and kind of run your finger across it, if it tears like this one's about to, then it's not going to be any good. You know, you're going to get halfway through your project and get really frustrated. So use a little sample piece like that and try to test it out first to make sure that it's sturdy enough. This is the best brand that I found. It just works really well. They're metallic brands of tissue paper. I know you can order this online too. Use whatever works for you, but this is the best stuff I've found so far, and it's what I've been using for these projects. Okay, let's get started with this. Okay, now what we need to do first is thin down some of the paste. You want about half a cup of water. I like to use filtered water. You're only going to pour in some of the water to start, because it's difficult to mix the paste if you put in all the water to begin with. You need to put in maybe a tablespoon of the paste, like that. And you go ahead and mix that up. And once it starts to dissolve, go ahead and pour in the rest of your water. Maybe add a little more paste, or a lot, like this. Now we're starting to get to the consistency it should be. There's not an exact recipe for this. What you pretty much just want is something kind of runny that you're going to be able to spread the paste out among the paper. It should look about like this, and you should have about half a cup to a cup of liquid. Okay, now to set this up, you want to take the piece of paper that you're going to have on the bottom. Sometimes the paper has a show side, meaning one side of it looks nicer than the other. You want to make sure that that side is face down on your table before you start. And you want to get the other piece of paper ready so that when you place it down, the show side is going to be up. You also want to make sure that you have some paper towels handy because it's going to get a little messy. Okay, so you just start to pour some of this paste onto the paper. You don't want to use all of it yet, just about that much, okay? And then either use your finger or a paintbrush to apply evenly to the paper all this paste water. And just make sure you get all the way out to the edges around the whole paper here. It's okay if you've got quite a lot on there. You want to be able to kind of smush the paper around. Alright, now you're going to very gently push the paper around and get out all the wrinkles. It might be a little easier to sort of lift the paper up from one end. Trying carefully not to tear it. And now that the paper's wet, when you lay it back down, it's going to kind of smooth out some of the wrinkles. That helps a little bit. And then you want to kind of work quickly to get this flattened out as much as you can. It also helps to really get the edges well. If any of your edges are dry, the paste might start to dry, and then it's a little difficult to get the paper back up. Okay. It does take some time and patience, so just be careful and do this methodically. If the paper doubles over on you, just take your time to smooth it out. It's also a good idea if you're wearing any jewelry to take it off so you don't accidentally scratch the paper and put a hole in it. Okay, now the paper is really starting to get smoothed down. You don't want to wipe away too much of the paste yet because you do want quite a lot sandwiched in between the two pieces. Just make sure you've got the lumps and bumps mostly out. You'll also notice that when you apply water to the paper, it spreads out a little bit. Okay, you might want to wipe your hands off before you go to grab your next piece of paper. Again, making sure that the side you want to show is out. And then you're just going to place this on your first sheet of paper. It's okay if it's wrinkly because it's going to flatten out once you get it on there. And you can go ahead and apply some more paste to the top of this paper. Make sure you have some for the edges. That's probably good. Okay, my hands are already messy, so I'm gonna skip the paintbrush this time. That's really an optional thing. Go ahead and get it on there, and as it's becoming wet, go ahead and start to smooth it out. When you lay this sheet down, you just want to make sure you're leaving yourself enough room so that the smaller sheet, if you have a smaller sheet, I'm going to put that on second, and then make sure that it doesn't go off the edge. That way you can utilize as much surface area of the paper as you can. The idea is that we're creating a piece of paper that's one color on one side and another color on the other side so that we can utilize structural color change in the model. But we also want it to be a large sheet of very thin paper so we can work in all the detail of a super complex box pleated origami design. So that's why I suggest using this method of creating your own paper. I know some paper like this is sold commercially, but I want to give you guys an option that might be a little more practical than spending a bunch of money to order something online. I think the most expensive part about this, if you already have a mirror, is probably the wallpaper paste, which I think costs about $10 or $15. And there's enough there to last through many projects. So what I did there is what I did for the first piece of paper. I went ahead and took it back up. Once the paper's wet, the adhesion of the paper and the water allow you to really smooth out any wrinkles. You want to be very careful when you're taking this up too, that you're not scratching a hole in it with your fingernail. This part is a little bit tedious, but once your paper is done, it'll look really nice, and it's perfect for the projects that I'll be showing you how to make this season, which are Ridley, Caduceus, Smaug, and Jabberwocky. But I wanted to make sure to show you guys how to do this first. So I always get asked what kind of paper I'm using. That is question number one. Okay, now that it's all smoothed out, we're going to wipe away as much of the excess paste as we can. You're going to start from the middle and kind of work in a radiating pattern from the middle, and you're actually going off the paper. That's why you want a flat surface that's a little bit bigger than a sheet of tissue paper. Most of the larger sheets of tissue paper are 20 by 30 inches, so you want something that's probably 2 feet by 3 feet, so you have a little clearance on either side. And you're just pushing this off. I don't know if you can tell, but the pink paper is running a little bit, the color. It's not really that big of a deal. The main thing is you don't want the paper that's going to rip while you're doing this. And if you have that kind, it probably would have done so already. So if you've gotten to this point, probably going to be safe. Okay, now this is where the paper towels come very in handy. I'm going to take a paper towel and wipe the edge away. Okay. Just keep drying your area out and throw this in the garbage. Or you can rinse that out in the sink and keep using the same paper towel. You just want to make sure to wring it out really well so that it's able to absorb more liquid. Okay. Probably want to go through and do this about 3 times, and at about that point the paper should be dry enough that you're going to come through and lay some paper towels on it to absorb the excess material off the top. Once you're pushing off to the side and you only see a thin little ribbon of the paste coming off, you won't be able to get much more off by squeegeeing it like this. So let's go ahead and get it to about this point, and then take some sheets of paper towel, just press it down onto the paper like this. And it shouldn't get all the way soaked through if you've already taken up enough of the liquid. So you can use it, each sheet, a couple of times, just like this. Okay, next you need to take enough paper towels so that you can lie this entire sheet down on another surface. So probably 2 rows that look about like that. I'm just going to set mine on the ground down here. We're going to pull the paper up carefully. Do it from this end. Very carefully at about a 45-degree angle. Pull the paper up, making sure to keep everything nice and even. And you can't see what I'm doing, but I'm just going to lay this paper down carefully on the paper towels that I've set on the floor here. Oh, there we go. And you can see what I've done there. And then you want to make sure that you lay it out evenly. Alright, now we just need to let it dry. While your paper's drying, you want to take it about every 10-20 minutes and flip it over. This helps it dry faster, and it's also going to prevent it from sticking to whatever surface that you have it lying on to dry. After a couple of hours, you won't need to flip it anymore. It'll dry, and when it dries, it won't be smooth, it'll be a little crinkly, but when we start to fold it, all of the crinkles will smooth out by the time we've applied all the pleats for the box pleating project. Now after about 3 or 4 hours, you should have a nice dry 2-color sheet of paper like this. I'm going to take away the paper towels. I'm going to show you how to cut this into a square for our projects. Smaug and Jabberwocky they use a 50 centimeter square, but Ridley and Caduceus use 40 centimeter. So we're going to start by making a straight edge at the bottom of our paper here, and I'm going to kind of eyeball it and make sure that when you draw up the side, it's not going to go off the edge. Go ahead and make one straight line across the paper like that, and then measure out your distance. So you go from here to here. It's going to be 40 centimeters. Now we need to take a right angle. Try to get one that's really accurate. Use your straight edge to finish up this side. Okay, and again, measure out 40 centimeters from this corner. Do that on the other side. And then make sure that the distance between these 2 points now is also 40, and then that should give you a square. Just like that. Okay, and then the best way I found for this next part is to just make a mountain fold along these lines that you've made for your box. And go ahead and do that all the way around the paper. And crease firmly through each one of those folds so it gives you a nice edge. And you're going to come through with a knife go under the paper and carefully, like you're opening a letter, trim away the excess paper. And make sure you're doing this really carefully. You keep an eye on the edge over here so you know that you're cutting them directly through that crease. It's helping you guide this cut. It's not a good idea to cut this with scissors because the scissors kind of go off course. This is really the best way to do it. Alright, so now we have our 30 centimeter by 30 centimeter square of purple and pink tissue paper that we'll use to create Ridley. In the next video, I'll show you how to set up the 72 by 72 box grid that we're going to use for that model. So I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.